Okay, all right. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. We are back. We're continuing on with our uh, look through the triennial Torah portion. Today, um, actually found out that I was a week behind, so I got two short portions that are combined for our purposes. This week, I think we will kind of look at some of these highlights, looking at Deuteronomy 16, 18, all the way through 18, verse 13. So that's 16, verse 18 through chapter 18, verse 13. I don't think we'll read all the way through, read some of the things that I wanted to look at. And then, time permitting, we'll also look at John chapter 5, Yochanan chapter 5. So I want to, let's see, I guess we can read probably the end of Deuteronomy chapter 16, starting with the 18th verse. I'm going to go over and put it up here on the screen for us to look at. Deuteronomy, got some honey. Deuteronomy, here, let me put it up here. Hold on. I need a spoon.
Okay.
Okay, so Deuteronomy chapter 16, verse 18, and we'll read down to the end of the chapter.
Appoint judges and officers within all your gates, which Yahweh your Elohim is giving you, according to your tribes. And they shall judge the people with righteous right ruling. Do not distort right ruling. Do not show partially, nor take a bribe, for a bribe blinds the eyes of the wise and twists the words of the righteous. Follow righteousness alone, so that you live and inherit the land which Yahweh your Elohim is giving you. Do not plant for yourself any tree as in Asherah, near the slaughter place of Yahweh your Elohim that you make for yourself. And do not set up a pillar which Yahweh your Elohim hates.
Okay, so all right. So again, we talked about this a little bit last week. Where when we look at these commandments, when we look at the law, statutes, and commands of Yahweh, when we look at the Torah, understanding that the Torah is, again, the character of the Most High humanized, right? Uh, if we walk out the Torah uh, commands, the law, statutes, and commandments, we will be manifesting the character of the Almighty. And even though we live in a time and a place where we are really a disjointed group of people, how we just read that verse in the Psalm, um, oh, how good it is for brethren to dwell together in unity. Well, we don't have like a collective unity. We don't have a nation, right? So, but what we want to be able to look at is again the underlying principles that we see inside of these commands. So, although we don't have a a singular nation, um, we do see inside of these commands the necessity for community, right? The community is the underlying principle here when we see people together with forms of accountability amongst groups of people, right? So when we look at Deuteronomy 16, verse 18, we see a perfect example of that. With the nation, it says, appoint judges and officers within all your gates, which Yahweh your Elohim is giving you according to your tribes, that they shall judge the people with righteous right ruling. So we want to look at, first of all, this appoint judges. Shoftim is judges. I want to pull up the Strongs here so we can look at some of these words in the Hebrew. Let's get this something like this. So we'll have to change this to judges. Here we go. We can probably put this all the way up here. Shoftim is judges. This would be shafat, which is the singular, of course, to judge. That is to pronounce sentence for or against, by implication, to vindicate or punish, by extension, to govern, passively, to litigate, condemn. Let's see if we have the word study. Oh, wait, I got to get my mouse. I'm having problems with my cursor today, I think. Here we go. Let's look at this. Um, Same thing. We don't gain any more. Judging encompasses all facets of the function in terms of government, executive, so on and so forth. But again, when we think about the idea of the underlying principles here that are at play, you have, and then it's even broken down in terms of the throughout the tribes. So we know the tribes were separated according to the tribes, and they had their own areas. But so within those areas, there were judges and officers, right? So you had set up in place this idea of these judges and officers, those that were able to execute judgment, uh, righteous judgment, right? So this is a command of the Almighty, right? So again, when we think about where we are, thinking about how we want to uh, you know walk in the commandments, right? We want to do that which is right in the sight of the Almighty. But nobody don't want this though, right? Nobody don't want. That's terrible English. Nobody don't want other people to be able to come around and say, that's a little wrong what you doing right there. You need to be doing this. right? You moved out, you moving a little left. You need to come back over a little right some more, right? Nobody don't want that, right? Everybody wants to be in control of their own self and don't want to have nobody around to tell you what. You can't tell me what to do. Hey, you ain't my daddy. People always saying that. People with no daddy be talking about you ain't my daddy. I don't even know what that is, right? So again, the idea here is the Most High is giving us these laws that shows us, again, the thing that we can see, this the underlying principle that we see here is community, right? Common unity, people being accountable to other people, right? Not just living their own lives separate from anyone else. Um, when you talk to people and um, you know, um, they talk about I'll pray about it. That's what people say. I'll pray about it, right? Which is good. Pray about it, right? But when we look at these laws, statutes, and commandments of the Almighty, it wasn't set up for individuals to just uh, be in some island, some desert island, um, unto themselves, right? It was set up to be connected with other people, right? It was set up like that, right? So again, you have these people who, people want to, they want to keep the commandments. They want to attach themselves to the Torah, but a lot of times these things are selective, right? And again, what we're talking about here is the this is the character of the Almighty. This is how He would have for us to be uh, on earth as we deal with one another, right? So again, this is this command. You shall appoint judges that will judge with righteous judgment. Let's see here. What is this? This says they shall judge the people with just judgment. Tzedek, which just means just, righteous, right ruling. Yeah, no, superstitious. Yeah. Yeah. So that word just, these judges again are not just these judges are not just judging based on their own thoughts, right? It's not about their own just made up thoughts. They are supposed to be judging the people with just judgment, righteous judgment, right ruling uh, judgment. That is just tzedek, which is, let's look at this in another. I keep losing my cursor. Um, yeah, yes, I am. Just hold on a second. All right. So, okay. So there is a qualifier here, right? The judges that are appointed are to judge with just judgment. Again, this word is tzedek, right, justice, righteous, right? Upright, right? And we only know what is just, what is upright, those things which are according to, right, according to the Almighty's commands. Right. So again, these judges aren't just making up their own thoughts. They're not just coming with their own ideas. They're doing these things based on the Torah, based on Yahweh's law, statute, right? The things that his standard, right? These things are based off of the standards that have been put in place by the Almighty, right? Verse 19 says, "You shall not distort justice," right? You shall not distort justice. Judgment, rest. Distort. What's this word? Nata. Stretch, spread, bend, right? So this is qualifying. This is qualifying the qualifier, right? It's dealing with this idea of bending or resting the judgment, right? Again, keeping all these things in their place. Mishpat is, yes, that's what judge, it's a form of the word for judge, and judgment is really the same word, right? So if you notice, mishpat, see if you look, the root word is shafat, is here, right? But then mishpat is just adding this mem to it, right? So the root of mishpat is shafat. So it's kind of like in the English, the judge makes the judgment, right? The shafat makes the mishpat. You know what I mean? Oh my goodness. It's like just a derivative. It's a derivative of it, right? Yeah. Sounds yummy. Yeah. So again, so verse 19 again says, "You shall not distort justice. You shall not be partial. You shall not take a bribe, for a bribe blinds the eyes of the wise and perverts the words of the righteous." Right? So these judges, so we're forced, right, as Israel to rely on the uprightness of others. You mean like they can't get corrupted? The people, well, well, that's something else. I'm saying this verse is talking about, yes, you can't have corruption, you can't have bribery, you can't have partiality. But what I'm saying is that we are forced to trust in the rightness of others, even where it depends on our situation is depending upon the rightness of others. Right? That's part of it. That it's something that's commanded. Right? So this is this is pretty interesting here, because we are always we seem that we aren't as trustworthy in others as we probably should be, right? We look around and we look at these people and we say, well, he's only human, right? So how am I going to sit up here and put my trust in these people?
Like a judge, you mean like a shafat,
I'm just talking about human beings
in general.
in general, right? The Shafat is a human being.
Mm-hmm.
The Shoftim are human beings,
Mm-hmm.
right? But we see in this command, a literal command to put our trust, if we're appointing these judges and officers, right? It's a command to put your trust in these human beings. But I think the other thing, I think I need some more honey in that. I think the other thing is that it's not like a just it's not like a it's a group of individuals, right? It's like we did you put anything in there? Put some more. Like when we think about like the Supreme, okay, that's good. We think about like the Supreme Court, like it's like a group of judges, right? You know, we go to the like this regular court, and you go to like and you sit in front of like a singular individual, right? But when I'm looking at this, it's like I get the idea of like this conglomerate of individuals that are coming together to execute this judgment, not putting it in the hands of a single individual, but having a group of people that are able to preside over a particular situation. And again, when we see that model, it is showing us this idea of community, right? Israel is a community, right? Israel is a nation, right? Even though we're in this land scattered all over the place, we should be able in our little pockets wherever we are to be able to have community, right?
I think people don't think about community until they need something. And they be like, where are the people at? I need, you know what I mean? And sometimes it's like, maybe it's a spiritual thing, like somebody's going through spiritual trauma or spiritual trial or tribulation, or depression or, some anxiety or something. But sometimes it can just be as simple as I need someone to help me physically, like take me to the store, or you know what I mean? It could be, you know, I need some men with a truck to help me get my stuff together and move, you know? It could be a physical thing, but I'm saying it could be a spiritual thing as well.
Yeah.
One of the things with marriages is, holding people accountable, holding like the women to hold the wives in the community accountable, and the men to hold the husbands in the community accountable, and the mothers to help other younger mothers maybe with their children learn how to do different things. Like me and Ebony, we share tips with each other about. Well, Ebony shares tips with me, I should say, about about how to different techniques and different things that work for younger children. But I'm just saying, like, maybe someone had teenagers and they're it's like they're it's community is about helping each other with life. It could be daily life, but it could also be spiritual life. But definitely it's spiritual as well. You need the Israelite community for the spiritual.
Yes, absolutely. And again, now when we look at this, the command again is to appoint the judges. But what I'm saying is that this underlying principle here is that you can't have a situation where you're appointing judges if you don't have community.
Yeah, exactly.
So at the same time as we're looking at this, we can see that the Most High is commanding us to actually be together with people.
With people, not an island, not an island unto
We were just
yourself.
talking about
Yeah. Or just not to be alone.
Yeah,
Wolf.
right. Yeah.
What did you say? You said about the army. What did you say about the army?
Oh yeah, I was saying that an army sticks together. Well,
I forget what context we were talking
For
about.
fellowship.
Yeah, like oh well,
And the strength
we
of
were
being in fellowship.
yeah, we were instructed not to forsake the assembling of ourselves together for a reason, because an army stays strong because they stick together and they don't leave. You know, like you can't just leave your battle buddy out there hanging
No.
for somebody's. You know, the whole army can go down. So
Exactly. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
That's a perfect example.
So when you think about this idea of assembling together, right? That's from a kind of quote unquote religious thought process in terms of like spiritual gatherings, right? Um, but we have our everyday lives also, right? So we see that on both ends. You see it from like the spiritual perspective, where the Most High looks for collective worship, collective, fellowship, spiritual fellowship, right? So that's one aspect, but here, this is kind of all inclusive here when we're dealing with this idea of elders and officers and judges, dealing with just everyday things,
Yeah. I guess
right?
somebody has a dispute.
Right.
But because like the Torah is spiritual, your civil disputes kind of your relationship with the Most High dictates how the outcome of your civil disputes
What?
are going to be handled.
What
Like,
are you saying?
I'm saying that your relationship with the Most High dictates how the civil disputes will be settled.
Okay, you just said it again, but I'm trying to figure out what you're saying though. You just said the same
I'm
thing.
saying there's no separation between quote unquote church and state like we have in America. Well, it's not all the way.
I'm saying
There's no separation of church and state. Like everyone's collective relationship with the Most High is interwoven into
the things
judgments
the
that
things
are made.
overlap. The things do overlap. Yeah, it's not as if if I see you on Shabbat, I'm only worrying about how I see you on Shabbat.
Yeah, exactly.
But
like me, like you know.
I've seen you during the week.
in
Sometimes.
a community type setting, when I'm talking about community, I mean people having relationships that are kind of intertwined.
Yes.
We should not only care about the other person's situation, but uh want to have your situation be cared about by someone on the outside. So in other words, I don't want to just say, well, I want to sit up here and I got all of these things to say about your situation. But I should kind of embrace the idea of hearing what you would have to say about my situation. Right? That's because we have a community relationship.
What do you mean by that?
What I mean is that okay, so verse 20 says, justice and only justice you shall pursue. But that's in the context of having these judges judge righteously. So in other words, I encourage, I desire to have individuals be able to speak into my situation. I want that, right? I want accountability. Yes, judge me, right? Judge me, right? We hear the mainstream Christian churches, don't judge me. You can't judge me, right? But I'm saying judge me, right?
If you find fault, give you that warning, right? Be that watchman,
right?
And be like, you a little bit off on that,
right? But what I'm saying is that you should want that, you should desire that, right? Because again, we see here the Most High is giving this command. This is a commandment to have this in place, right? So we should be trying to figure out how we're able to make this commandment be real in 2018.
Not just in theory, not theoretical, or like saying, well, that was then and this is now.
Right. Well, not just throwing your hands up. Well, we don't have a nation, so we can't worry about judges and officers. And I'm sure there's people that's gonna say that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's for the nation. That's for when you get in the land. We don't have that. But again, you know, we have to be able to look at these scriptures and see again the underlying principles that they're putting forth. Right? It's the only way we're able to walk out this Torah today because we are in a land that is not our own. Right? But again, we still have to exhibit the character of the Almighty, and the only way we do that is by looking at these underlying principles that we see in the scriptures, right? So again, verse 20 says, that which is altogether just shalt thou follow. Altogether just. I guess it's the New American Standard says justice and only justice shall you pursue. So again, I'm seeking out justice, right? I'm seeking out uprightness, right? That word there, in terms of pursuit, is radaf. Radaf. To run after. I'm running after uprightness, right? This is the thing that I'm chasing after with hostile intent, right? I'm running vigorously after chasing righteousness, right? I'm running it down. That righteousness is in front of me, and it got something that I want, and I'm gonna run and tackle that thing, right? Hunt, right? Look, it's a hunt, right? So it's aggressive. It's not kind of like a passive thing. Like we're not stumbling upon uprightness, right? We're not just kind of accidentally kind of sliding into rightness, right? But we are pursuing it, right? And this is the attitude that we have to have, um, you know, walking out the Torah, right? Okay, so let's keep going here. Let's see, the last two verses here deals with, thou shalt not plant thee a grove of any trees near unto the altar of Yahweh thy Elohim, which thou shalt make. Now thou shalt set thee up any image which Yahweh thy Elohim hates. All right, so again, looking at this, we see that the Almighty is dealing with people going into the land, Israel going into the land, and how they are going to set up things in the land. Right. So, this kind of a reiteration of things. Now, as we go into the next chapter, it's interesting that, all of these things, there's a lot of times we see things are mentioned that involve the actions of these other nations, right? And as we get ready to go into the next chapter, we'll come back to this in thought, but I just want us to notice that these things, these customs, these ways that these other nations, these things, these other people are doing. The Most High is bringing them up, by, specifically bringing them up and saying, don't do these things. All right, so let's go over. And I'm saying that just to say because when we go to the next chapter, some interesting things happen here. Chapter 17. Let's see here. Oh, I'm thinking about 18. So let's go over to 17, verse 2. I want to read it from this other version, though. All these numbers. Let's see. Read down to 13. 2 to 13.
Deuteronomy 7:2. When there is found in your midst, in any of your cities which Yahweh your Elohim is giving you, a man or a woman who does what is evil in the eyes of Yahweh your Elohim, in transgressing his covenant, it has gone
And
and has gone and served other mighty ones and bowed down to them, or to the sun, or to the moon, or to any of the hosts of the heavens, which I have not commanded. And it has been made known to you, and you have heard, and have searched diligently, then see if true. The matter is confirmed that such an abomination has been done in Israel. Then you shall bring out to your gates that man or woman who has done this evil matter, and you shall stone to death the man or woman with stones. And at the mouth of two or three witnesses shall he that is to die be put to death. He is not put to death by the mouth of one witness. The hand of the witnesses shall be first against him to put him to death, and the hand of the people of all the people last. So you shall purge the evil from your midst. When any matter arises which is too hard for you to judge, between blood and blood, between plea and plea, or between stroke and stroke, matters of strife within your gates, then you shall rise and go up to the place which Yahweh your Elohim chooses, and shall come to the priests and Levites, and to the judge who is in those days, and shall inquire, and they shall declare to you the word of right ruling, and you shall do according to the word which they declare to you in that place which Yahweh chooses. And you shall guard to do according to all that they instruct you. Do do according to the Torah in which they teach you, according to the right ruling which they say to you. You do not turn to the right or to the left from the word which they declare to you. And the man who acts arrogantly so not to listen to the priest who stands to serve there before your Elohim, or to judge that man shall die. So you shall purge the evil from Israel.
13.
And let all the people hear and fear, and no longer do it arrogantly.
Okay, very good. so so here we see kind of uh, what this looks like, right? We have the judges and the um, officers set in place, right? And then you have this issue, right? An issue that comes to be, some man and some woman is doing this evil in the eyes of Yahweh, right? And they begin doing this thing that this idolatrous thing, right? But verse 4, I think, is the most important part here. And it has been made known to you, and you have heard and have searched diligently. Then see if true the matter is confirmed that such an abomination has been done in Israel, right? So so this ends up being a thing that is unto death, right? So it's not, we're not talking about something that hearsay is not something that's involved here, right? This thing doesn't have anything to do excuse me, with with he said, she said, right? This don't have nothing to do with he said, she said, right? we can't we can't be dealing with rumors, right? Somebody told me that they saw so and so over here doing this thing or that thing, right? It's not about it's about uh these things have been searched out and have multiple witnesses, multiple people being able to verify. Multiple people are able to verify this. Yeah, you can say it. Multiple people are able to verify these charges, right? So it says again in verse 4, it has been made known to you, and you have heard and searched diligently, right? It's not just about, no, what's the name said to me the other day that they saw so and so over here um doing some idolatry. This ain't that, right? This is multiple hey, what's up, man? This is multiple sources, right? And here we're looking at 2 or 3 witnesses is necessary, right? And again, there's some investigation thing that's going on here as well, right? So not only did you hear about what was said, but you went and to see um if these things were so, right? If these things can be proven, right? So again, if we're looking at all of this, is getting us to a place that's kind of solidifying this idea of community, right? People caring about other people and dealing with them accordingly, right? We're looking at Deuteronomy um, chapter 17. You guys just came in here. And we're talking about when we see in the scriptures where the Almighty is showing us that we should be in these community situations, right? When we're not just doing whatever it is that feels right in our own sight, in our own minds, right? But he puts us together with individuals and causes us to allow other people and actually trust other people to have influence in our lives. So again, here in the beginning of this 17th chapter here, we see that as far as the nation is concerned, if you were proven to be someone that is worshiping idols, right? He was killed, right? So again, we are a nation inside of a nation, right? We're ruled by this nation that we live in, right? I can't witness Chris doing some idolatry and just kill him, right? Because
Could, but you know,
I could, but
you would go to jail.
right, like we're not at liberty to administer judgment in that way. But again, we have to be able to see again the underlying principles that are involved, and if nothing else, we can see accountability is something that again that we should run to. We should chase after it, right? I um should create an environment that encourages people that I consider my brothers. I should encourage um, input from them, right? And they should encourage input from me, right? We can't be in a place where we aren't able to um, receive correction from others, right? Because when we look at these commands that the Most High is putting in place, people who say that you are supposed to be following the commandments, he has literally put these things in place, which causes men to uh, depend on the judgment and guidance of other human beings. Okay, so keep on going down here. You read down to what, 13?
Mhm.
Let's see here. Down in verse 11, Deuteronomy 17, verse 11. Do according to the Torah in which they teach you, according to the right ruling which they say to you. You do not turn to the right or to the left from the word which they declare to you. Again, this is the individuals in relation to the officers and the judges, right? And the man who acts arrogantly so as not to listen to the priest who stands to serve there before Yahweh your Elohim or to the judge, that man shall die, right? So again, this is not only dealing with the judges and the priests, but also the people who's receiving the judgment, right? So these things are things that the person is commanded to do as the judgment, according to the judgment that's put forth. And again, we don't have um, these things put in place, but we are able to see, the underlying principles that are put in place. And again, saying this over and over again, is this idea of interconnectedness with people, right? With people, um, the people of Yahweh. We as Israel, um, as it says up in verse 20 of chapter 16, are to pursue after this judgment, right? We're supposed to chase after this judgment, right? We should invite those that we consider our brothers in the faith to help us along this way, right? Where a lot of times, you know, you have these people saying, don't judge me, right? Don't judge me. You can't judge me.
Only God can judge.
Yeah. Where they get that? Is that a Bible verse?
I know. No, that's no Bible verse that I know about. But people say it like
They say it like it is, right? But here, the Most High is commanding his people to set up people to judge. The complete opposite of that, right? Okay, let's keep going. I want to go down to um 17:14. I want to read. Let's see here. Oh yeah, this is where we're at. I want to read 17:14 and 15. Let's see how far down it goes. Yeah, let's just read the whole thing and then we'll go back. Let's see, down to 14 down to 20. 17:14 down to verse 20. If I get back up to it. You read that, Hisky, nice and loud?
When you come to the land which Yahweh your Elohim is giving you, and you shall possess it and shall dwell in it, and you shall say, "Let me set a sovereign over me like all the nations that are around me." You shall certainly set a sovereign over you who Yahweh your Elohim shall choose. Set a sovereign over you from among your brothers. You are not allowed to set a foreigner over you. What who is not your brother. Only he is not to increase horses for himself, nor cause the people to return to Mitzrayim to increase horses. For Yahweh has said to you, do not return that way again. And he is not to increase wives for himself, lest his heart turn away, nor is he to greatly increase silver and gold for himself. And it shall be when he sits on the throne of his reign that he shall write for himself a copy of this Torah in a book from the one before the priests and Levites. And it shall be with him, and he shall read it all the days of his life, so that he learns to fear Yahweh his Elohim and guard all the words of this Torah and these laws to do them, so that his heart is not lifted up above his brothers, and so as not to turn aside from the command right or left, so that he prolongs his days in his reign, he and his children in the midst of Israel.
Okay, so we just looked over in chapter 16, where it's talking about appointing judges and officers. But over here, now it's talking about how to appoint a king. Let's see, verse 14. It's interesting, which it almost doesn't make any sense, right? But here it is, right? When you come to the land which Yahweh your Elohim is giving you, and you shall possess it and shall dwell in it, and you shall say, let me set a sovereign over me or a king over me, like all the nations that are around me. We look at all of these things that Israel deals with. It always, the things that are bringing Israel down always has something to do with being like these other nations. So when we think about this command here, this command is a difference between what we see here in 17:14 through 20 and what we saw back in verse chapter 16, where it actually was a command, thou shalt, right, appoint these judges and officers. But here is more like this provision that's set up. If you're going to do this thing, this is how you do it. Not saying thou shalt set up a king for yourself, right? But if you do set up a king, this is how you set up the king. Because best case scenario, Israel don't have a king,
Mm-hmm.
right? The Most High is the king.
Right.
But because of the fact that the Most High looks at his people and knows that they're going to sit up there and want to be like the rest of these people that's around them, he gives them this command. I want to look at 2 Kings 17 real quick. 2 Kings. Because we don't really have any good examples of doing things like the people that are around us. It seems like it's always problems, right? Let's look over here real quick. 2 Kings. 2 Kings 17. Verse 7. 17. Yeah. Now this came to be because the children of Israel had sinned against Yahweh their Elohim, who had brought them up out of the land of Mitzrayim from under the hand of Pharaoh, sovereign of Mitzrayim, and feared other mighty ones, and walked in the laws of the nations whom Yahweh had dispossessed from before the children of Israel, and of the sovereigns of Israel that they had made. And the children of Israel secretly did against Yahweh their Elohim matters that were not right, and they built for themselves high places in all their cities, from watchtower unto the walled city, and set up for themselves pillars and asherim on every high hill and under every green tree, and burned incense there on all the high places, like the nations whom Yahweh had removed from their presence. And they did evil matters to provoke Yahweh, and served the idols of which Yahweh has said to them, do not do this. And Yahweh warned Israel and Yehudah through all of his prophets and every seer, saying, turn back from your evil ways and guard my commands and my laws, according to all the Torah which I command your fathers, and which I sent to you by my servants the prophets. But they did not listen, and hardened their necks like the necks of the fathers, who did not put their trust in Yahweh their Elohim, and rejected his laws and his covenant that he had made with their fathers, and his witnesses which he had witnessed against them, and went after worthlessness and became worthless, and after the nations who were all around them, of whom Yahweh had commanded them not to do like them. And they left all the commands of Yahweh their Elohim, and made for themselves a molded image, 2 calves, and made an Asherah, and bowed themselves to all the hosts of the heavens, and served Baal. Oh, wait. I was only reading 15.
Hmm.
And they became worthless, and after the nations who were all around them, and whom Yahweh had commanded them not to do. Right? So this is an example of Israel wanting to be like the nations around them. Right? The Most High actually did not want for Israel to even have a king. But he did give Israel a way boundaries for a king if they decided to go ahead and do so, right? So again, the difference here is this idea of a command versus kind of guidelines. Um, the command was to have um, judges and officers in the nation. That's the command. The guideline is if you're going to make a king, um, here is how you are to go about doing it. So I want to look at some of these things that the qualifications for the person being king. First of all, you couldn't be a foreigner, right? You couldn't have some outsider coming in and ruling over the people. Um, for obvious reasons, right? Israel um, has the commands of the Almighty, right? The Most High has given us the way that He would have for us to live. Within His commands, He set up, the boundaries upon which He wants for us to live. Um, he calls for His people to be a separate, set apart people from the other nations. So you obviously can't have um, people from other nations coming in and
ruling over you.
right, right, because all they're gonna do is cause you to go away from the Almighty. Um, and we see that over and over again as it relates to Israel. Um, in the history, Israel's always going, and a lot of times it goes with these strange women that's always seem to be so beautiful and enticing that is always causing us to go out and begin to serve these other gods, right? So you're obviously not going to have a king that is outside of Israel. He must be one of your countrymen, right? Verse, let's see, certainly set sovereign over you of your brothers. Oh, 16. Only he is not to increase horses for himself, which seems kind of strange. It's odd. Just the idea of increasing horses. Like, what's the big deal with that? Um, but when we think about this idea of increasing horses, it has to do with um,
Working, like plowing the land. Do they use the horses to do
well,
that?
no, it was more about warfare. You didn't really use horses for agricultural purposes, but it was more about warfare that they was that you would collect these horses and have these chariots. Um, when we think about the fact that the Most High said that He was going to fight for Israel, right? So it didn't really matter the size of Israel. It wasn't like Israel had to go and put together these huge armies and whatnot because the Most High fought for them, right? The whole idea was that they was great not because they was greater than these other nations.
Right.
They was great because of the Almighty. So this idea of increasing horses really is kind of just, it takes away from who the Almighty is and His place within Israel. right? So this is a thing that men do. This is a thing that these other nations are doing, trying to become these great nations, and with
Building
these,
bigger armies, bigger
yeah,
weapons. And
yeah, that's what we do, right?
they got 1,000,000 tanks.
Yeah. So the equivalent of that is this, right? So the Most High wants to keep the focus not on your physical strength, how strong you are, right? But keeping it focused with, who he is. And that pulls away from that when you have this idea of increasing horses, right? So that was one of the prohibitions. 17, he is not to increase wives for himself, lest his heart turn away, nor is he to, oh, okay. So this idea of increasing wives to himself, it's interesting when we look at this. We could probably go down through this list and look at King Solomon, and just every one of these things. Well, besides he was Israelite, but these other things in terms of the horses and the wives and the silver and the gold,
Yeah.
he did all of these things, right? He's kind of like the epitome of the example of what not to be, aside from the fact that he was the wisest.
Well, the Most High said he was going to give him the silver and gold. So, because he didn't ask for that, he asked for wisdom, right? And so the Most High said he was going to give him that and like riches.
Yeah, but I think that we see with this person Solomon, who was the received this wisdom from the Almighty. Part of wisdom is discretion, right? And we have to be able to. That's part of wisdom, and you could see how the way that they did with these wives. If I want to go take over a country, I'll go and meet with this other king, and then he'll offer me his bride, his daughter, as some type of token of solidarity. I got the Most High on my side.
Unity.
I'm the strongest one around because I serve the Almighty. Give me over your daughter or whatever, and we won't try to take over your situation. So diplomatically, it would seem like that would be like that's a smart thing to do. But the problem is that these women end up having all this influence over him, like they always do.
They serve other gods,
right? And bringing him over to this idolatry, which they always do, right? Those powerful creatures, those women, aren't they? Let's put the little spells on us. Okay, so we see here this thing where the Most High said not to increase wives to themselves. Now, this is very it's vague, right? Because David had probably like seven or six or seven or eight wives. David did. He didn't have any yeah. Yeah, a few different wives, right? That wasn't his problem. Now his son had like hundreds of wives. Right? Now that's just taking it too far though, ain't it?
Well,
hundreds?
Like, yeah, that's too much. Like,
I mean,
I don't know even how you can keep up.
I don't know what this number is, what it's saying. Don't increase wives for yourself, but it 700 got to be beyond this.
Just 700.
He had 700 wives, didn't he?
I thought it was 100.
Who, Solomon?
Yeah. Huh?
He had hundreds of wives and
I thought
hundreds
it
of.
was like 100, and I didn't know it was like more than like hundreds.
He had more wives than there is in a year, days in a year.
What?
Look it up.
How does he keep up with that?
Exactly. Even Hiskey can't figure it out. He had wives and concubines galore. and it tells you why he don't want the king to do it, right?
That's it too.
Right. That said too. That's why I said check the sources on who put that one in
How many wives did who have? Solomon?
Yeah.
Oh, wait, that's they.
Yep.
What?
1 Kings 11:1 through 3 indicates that King Solomon had 700 wives.
How many concubines?
300.
Dealing with 1,000 women, 1,000 different women.
1,000.
1,000. That's crazy.
What? Yeah, that's crazy.
So
What?
right. So all I'm saying is that this number, whatever it is, David didn't have the same problem that I'm saying. David was like the apple of the Most High's eyes, right? So I'm looking at David where he had his little 7 wives, and he was cool. So the rabbis will sit up there and say that if you look at what is it, Second Samuel 12:8. Let me see here. 2 Samuel 12:8. And I gave you your master's house and your master's wives into your bosom, and gave you the house of Israel and Yehuda. And if that were not enough, I would have given you much more. Right? So they use the rabbis will say, well, since he at this time had 6 wives at this time. What does this say? Much more. What version is this? Oh, this is this. Let me see what KJV says. Because some versions say twice the more. Giving you such. Okay, some versions say twice the more. So if he already had 6 and they double up on that 6, which would be 12 plus 6 is 18. So they came up with the number of 18 being the cutoff point of the amount of wives that you could have based on the fact that he had 6 and he could get twice more than what he already had. Again, they made that up totally, and the number's non-specific, but it got to be somewhere in between 6 and
18.
Well, I don't know 18. 18, that's what I'm saying. That's the number that the rabbis would say is 18, based on the fact that David had six, and he was said to been able to have been given twice the amount of what he already had. But first of all, so when we look at this, people who talk about, having, multiple wives and all of this, they look at the kings, and the kings were given this, you know,
Mr. Johnson.
yeah, given this thing to look at the kings, and they had multiple wives, and look at the forefathers, and they had multiple wives, and all of this. Um, and it's not a thing that the Most High is calling sin, the action of having these multiple wives, right? That in and of itself is not a sin, right? But if we just go all the way back again, just looking at this whole idea of this whole king thing, um, the command, he never commanded us to even have a king, right? He's setting up boundaries for when we sit up here and want to do and be like these other nations. Here is how we do it. So I'm saying the same thing could be said when we look at this whole thing with this whole wife situation. When we look at the examples that we have for these people who have these multiple wives, we we got nothing but bad examples in the scriptures. It's strife and turmoil all over the place. And it don't have nothing to do with our Western minds. You know what I mean? It don't have nothing to do with our Western minds. Some people with their Eastern mind frames was jealous of each other.
Yep. Women, then they want their kids to be, top dog. I mean, just create.
It's just human.
Right.
So just to say that we have this law that speaks on a thing is not like the Most High is smiling on the thing just because he has laws to dictate how you would function inside of the thing, right? So when we look at the king situation, it's just that. Just a chapter before, he showed us, how the nation needs to get along. If you're functioning, with this idea of the judges and the officers, what's the king do? What's the king do? What's his place? Where is he? Like Israel can function without a king, right? He didn't talk to us about having a king unless we sit up here and want to be like the other nations. Okay, let me switch out of this. We switch out of this version here. Yeah, so when you look at these things, right? Again, thinking about people who, we want to be these people, we want to attach ourselves to the commands and all of that. Again, we have to be able to look and see and deal with these underlying principles again. So when we look at this here, even when it's talking about the king, understanding why it is we even have this command here in the first place, because this is kind of like when we think about the idea of the Most High's perfect will and his permissible will. His perfect will is for us to be able to function within the nation with our judges and officers, right? But he allowed for his people to do this thing that at on every at every point is a representation of what's going on around the people, but he allowed for Israel to do this thing in a way that was you know as Israelitish as it could be. But again, when we look down at verse 18, where it says, "And it shall be when he sits on the throne of his reign," right? You had the things that he wasn't supposed to do. The thing that he was supposed to do was that he shall write for himself a copy of this Torah in a book from the one before the priests, the Levites, and it shall be with him, and he shall read it all the days of his life, so that he learns to fear Yahweh, his Elohim, and guard all the words of this Torah and these laws to do them. Right? So why would he even need to do that? Like, why would he need to sit up here and just have that extra step to sit up here and have to write the Torah and then read it every day?
So it can stay fresh in his mind, and so his foot wouldn't slip.
Yeah, but beyond that, it's so that he wouldn't fall into the problem that goes along with being the king.
Right.
It's just this whole pride thing.
Yep.
Right? I'm over all of these people.
I'm the ruler.
Yeah. Of you all.
Right.
Right? So it's necessary for him to have this added extra thing attached to his situation. Oh, verse 20. So that his heart is not lifted up above his brothers. That's why. It's just something that goes along with just being the king. But again, this is a thing that's not something that we do. Right? It's something that the Most High allowed for us to do because, of our envy of the nations around us, which in every situation always caused us to go away from the Almighty.
I mean, this is going on today with people who ain't even kings. People who just got a good job, or you know what I mean, or they might be, a star, a football player, or something. They be turning their nose up on their brothers, and like, who is you? You ain't nobody.
Yeah. Right, because when we have like a position, it causes us to act and be a certain way. We need something to be able to ground us, keep us grounded as human beings, which the Most High accounted for, right? But if you don't even take it to that place and don't just do this thing that the Most High allowed, he then forbid you to do it, but you got all of these stipulations that you have to keep in order to do it, you could just alleviate all of that and just don't even have a king. But we see what happened with the people, right? I guess Solomon didn't he didn't read that.
Nah.
He might have wrote it, but he didn't read it. And even if he did read it, maybe he did read it, but it didn't help him. He didn't take heed. He didn't take heed to it, right?
No, he was blinded by them 1,000 women.
Actually, the reason why it's
Okay. All right, let's look over at a couple things in chapter 18. 18. Let's see here. Let's go over to chapter 18, verse 9 through 13. Hisky, read that 18, verse 9 through 13.
When you come into the land which Yahweh your Elohim is giving you, do not learn to do according to the abominations to those nations. Let no one be found among you who makes his son or his daughter pass through the fire, or one who practices divination, or a user of magic, or one who interprets omens, or a sorcerer, or one who conjures spells, or a medium, or a spiritist, or one who calls up the dead. For whoever does these is an abomination to Yahweh. And because of these abominations, you, y'all, y'all, and because of these abominations, Yahweh your Elohim drives them out from your before you. Be perfect before Yahweh your Elohim.
Okay, so again, we don't, when we look at things like this, we don't need, you know, we don't need to look, very hard in order to be able to try to apply these things. We don't have to try to figure out how we can walk these things out, here. Um, Again, we look at these things that they're doing, again, these things that are connected to these other nations. Um, but it goes into this idea of, causing your sons and your daughters to pass through the fire. We talked about that, a few weeks ago in terms of this idea of Molech, and again, when you think about, being in a place like we are, a nation that's not around, that has, all of its ways and customs about it. Um, we talked about this before. We may not be literally taking our children and placing them in fire, from a literal perspective, but when we allow the ways of this foreign nation that we are in, when we allow it to be the controlling influence over our sons and our daughters, we're basically burning our children unto Molech, right? When we allow, this, this pagan nation that we live in to be the the primary influence, over our children, we're basically handing our 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 children over to another god. We don't always think about it in that way, but when you sit down and think about it, that's what it is. We have to, um, especially when we have a lot of connection with, especially with the school system. Everybody's not able to take their children out of the system, but there has to be some type of deprogramming that goes on, and be so that we're able to make sure that influence isn't as strong as they would like for it to be. You know what I mean? Otherwise, you know, you know, the future just becomes lost. It's interesting going through and looking at these people where they sit up here and talk about. Um, I saw something the other day. They want to call babies babies.
Babies.
Yeah. Thinking about like a baby boy or a baby girl. They're just they. And then they can choose. They can choose what they want to be, when they like this stuff is crazy. But they make it so that um, you know, you must accept these ways. Like, and you can't sit up there and talk against these people's rights to be whoever they want to be. As crazy as it seems, like you have physical parts, like you either one or the other. Like it's not a mystery. You know what I mean? But the way it is now, it like it you just get confused. Like somebody who's aware can be confused. Like, or is it really like a thought? Like, if I just let them grow, will they figure out that there's something else? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's crazy. But again, we have to be able to control the influence of our children, right? Because otherwise, we're just giving them over to the other side. Now, these other things, right? This practicing divination and users of magic and sorcerers and so forth. You think about like I didn't Tirsa had brought this to my attention the other day about these people using sage, like burning sage.
Hmm.
Like, I thought that was just kind of like a just like people burn incense. You know what I mean? Like a kind of a natural kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
But this thing that they're actually doing by burning this sage, like it veers off evil spirits.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, the crystal too.
Huh?
And charging the crystals and then.
Oh yeah, and having these are things I think that we have to be knowledgeable of, I would say, because when you think about, I'm saying there has to be a line somewhere, but I'm not sure what that line is. Um, because are they just using the sage because it smells good and burning it like incense? You know what I mean? Or
I think it's like a Native American custom.
I know, but where does it originate from?
That came, I don't know. The Native Americans came out with it.
That
Native Americans.
No, that aromatherapy stuff is real. You burn different lavenders and all these different types of even different spices, and I did look into that, and it does like supposedly ward off certain spirits and could calm your spirit. Um, it's a whole big topic. It's a whole big thing. But
I
yeah, you
know,
can
but
use it for you
where's
too.
the line though? Where's the line at? Like, you know what I mean? Like, am I doing some evil thing by burning some lavender?
Well, in the temple, the priests well, they had to burn certain incense and whatnot. And I know, it was a sweet savor to the Most High. But yeah, I mean, I don't know nothing specifically in the law that say you can or can't, But yeah, where is the line?
It got to be somewhere, because like again, we look at this where it talks about this idea of doing these divination practices and using magic and so on and so forth. Um, there has to be like like incense. We could have incense, but we couldn't have that specific recipe for the incense that they use in the temple. And the same with the oil. Like there was a recipe for the temple that we was forbidden to use outside of the temple. But but incense though, because I'm sure I would think that the same people that are burning sage to get rid of evil spirits, there are probably people that burn certain incenses for the same purposes.
Possibly.
But how am I supposed to know which ones is the difference? Because one of them I ain't supposed to be doing, right?
I don't burn incense, so I don't got that problem.
Chris don't care. He don't burn incense.
But you know, I heard though, if you could do a good magic show, it's a nice profession.
I mean, well, I know, but magic isn't like real magic. It's like sleight of hand and like.
But is it? But it's making people believe it's magic. They're believing it's, you know.
So wait. So you saying David Blaine is breaking this commandment, right?
Yeah. All of them.
Oh my God.
All of them.
You can look at magic as deception too, because you deceiving somebody. You know something that they don't, and you like kind of deliberately lying to them. Like I'm gonna trick you. You know what I'm saying? They call it tricks. Let me show you this magic trick.
You call it
But
trick.
don't you already know that it's really like just a sleight of hand thing? Like you already know it. And like the wonder of it is like you're sitting up there trying to figure out like how did he do that?
Well, some people ain't doing stuff like that. Some people really, you know, doing stuff. You know, you got witches who do witches and warlocks, all that stuff. That stuff is real. People doing stuff, casting spells.
But
Yeah, you know they
isn't don't they say what's David Blaine called?
An illusionist.
An illusionist. Yeah, he's called an illusionist.
Because he's really just he's not
called an illusionist.
he's not literally sticking sharp thing through his hand.
But he did have the bullet. He did have the bullet shot at his mouth.
Well, that was like a stunt though. Like he does stunts and he also does things that are illusions.
So he does real dangerous things that he's able to somehow miraculously survive.
Yes.
That dude's burning. But you know, like right now, they in like a lot of Christian churches, the white ones, you know, they got like they're doing witch stuff. You know, they got Harry Potter, you know what I mean, stuff they're doing in the churches. Like, you know, Harry Potter clubs and you know what I mean, and they're dressing up like witches and stuff in the church.
Yeah. Well, I guess stuff like that I think is more like it's more blatant. I'm just kind of thinking about the things that are kind of like on the line. Like when you think about people looking at like how a particular precious stone affects your physical body. So you'll wear like stones because it does something for your I'm just saying circulation. Like and then Tears are talking about people taking their little crystals that they find naturally, and somehow the moon charges them up somehow. Is that a natural thing, or is that like some witch thing? It sounds spooky to me, so I would never, you know what I mean?
The witches do it.
But I'm just trying to figure out, like, there is this like just some homeopathic natural stuff, or is it like witchcraft?
I feel like everything has a good and evil component. Like you can use there's a lot of things you can use for good, and you can likewise flip it for evil. Just like those who control the world today, you know, it's a lot of good things and technology they use, but it has a dual purpose that, you know, you could use it for. You know, just like we, you know, would look at witches and they use blood and all that, but so did the priests and all that in certain ceremonies and burning their incense. If you look at that, that's kind of like, if you look at their rituals, but you know, we had specific things we had to do. So I think it's kind of weird because I started looking into metaphysics just a little bit myself, and it's like, you know, the ancient societies, they had their certain concoctions on how to heal you. They didn't have to give you pills and this pharmaceutical stuff and these different herbs and And it's like we lost and don't know a lot of these secret things that our ancient forefathers and other societies used to use. So really, is a lot of it's going to look spooky when you look into it, because now we're dependent on all this technology, and we don't know what the Most High, what all these crystals and stones. I feel like if it come from the earth and it does have certain properties, I mean, how could it be wicked if you're not using it for wicked? If you're actually using it to heal somebody, I mean, if somebody else takes it and wants to manipulate somebody, then a cure, obviously it's wicked. But I don't know, man, because if it don't necessarily speak about all that in the scriptures, but that's just my take on it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of like for us on the outside looking in, we look at these things, and like you say, it's like since we've been separated from these things, we don't necessarily know how to discern what's what. To me, everything looked like voodoo. You know what I mean? But
Right.
I I don't know where the line is. You know what I mean? If I'm crossing it or not, I don't know where it's at.
Well, I think the Bible talks about how somebody gets healed, supposed to pray, not charge a crystal. Not, you know what I'm saying? That's how they did it. They say when someone's sick amongst you, what do you do? Get some anointing oil. You know what I'm saying? Lay hands on them, pray.
I think that's definitely a way that the Bible specifically speaks on that specific way.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, if if we look at like food and herbs and all of that stuff,
Mm-hmm.
which is food nourishment for our bodies, um, foods have healing properties.
Mm-hmm. They do. Yeah.
But it's just like, but I'm just saying when we tap into these things, there got to be like a line that we get to that I don't know where the line is.
You're saying you don't know. Someone has said, could it be based on intent that, like many things, people pervert the use of things Yah meant for good? Evil perverts the original intent and design. Similar to fire, it can be used for good or for evil.
Well, yeah, I agree with that. All I'm saying is that I don't know where the line is.
Mm-hmm.
But I could see how, like for example, when we at the Sukkot we made tinctures and we was
Y'all was
putting
doing some voodoo at
well.
Sukkot.
We was putting our little herbs in, we put our herbs, and then we put vodka in. We let it sit for 6 weeks. And at the end of 6 weeks, we had a tincture. And like I had like different herbs that was good for blood pressure. But then people had herbs that was good for eyesight. People had herbs that was good for, whatever they in their health situation needed, cleansing herbs or whatever. And then you put the herbs in, you put the vodka and you let it sit for 6 weeks and then you use it. Well, somebody could look at that and be like, yeah, they're like doing they're making potions. The word, because you can use the word potion. You're putting all this stuff in the thing, stirring it around. Alchemy, letting it sit. But at the same time, the Most High said that He had created the herbs for healing. And we can see how all these herbs have these healing properties. I draw the line. I tell people don't smudge because I could see how that came from the Native Americans. You know what I mean? Like that's what they do. That's not our custom.
I'm saying
that's not according to our
if
custom.
you could look at a thing and name it and connect it to other people,
say where it came from. That's where I'm like.
Yeah.
And then the other thing would be, so I don't believe in that. I tell people I do not. When a woman comes and starts talking about smudging to me, I say no. I don't agree with the crystals thing only because I don't see how putting them in the moonlight is going to do anything to the electrons, or I don't know what it's doing. Like to me, it's just.
But
I know the pagans do that.
what if it scientifically does do
If
something?
somebody scientifically proves it to me, then we can have another
I
conversation.
think it just looks like voodoo to me.
I'm saying
Okay.
somebody scientifically proves that the before and the after effects, the moon did something to it, then we can maybe have another conversation. But nobody's proven it to me. To me, you just put it out there and worshiping the full moon and saying that the moon god is going to somehow charge my. That's what I'm saying. Like I don't see how it did anything. But if it does do something, I want somebody to show me some scientific evidence that it did something to it overnight. If you did that, then we can have another conversation about it. And I'll bring the evidence.
Well, there.
I personally started looking into a lot of that stuff because um I feel like you gotta remember because a lot of all the people, the Most High made all people, and He gave all people some kind of knowledge and information, whether it be the Chinese, the Indians, and whatever ancient practices they use. A lot of them still hold on to those things today. Whatever methods that they use to heal naturally. Tony, you mentioned the herbs, and absolutely the different herbs primarily is supposed to be our source of healing. And like Chris was right, you're supposed to we supposed to pray over each other and do those different things. But there's just, I mean, there's another level. I mean, like it's saying Daniel, it's saying in the last days, knowledge shall be increased. And I think that knowledge is part of that science. That Teresa was even mentioning that there's things that for instance, if you can go in and see like how a microprocessor in a computer is made, it's like sorcery. Like how they even make these computers on it's a microscopic level. You can't even see it, but there's billions of these things doing this stuff that creates radiation and it messes you up or something like that. So how could that not be sorcery or something when we use that? So I think it just comes down to, you got to kind of look into it. It's like things could be used for good and evil, but I see what you're saying, Tony, because it's better to be safe than sorry. If the scriptures don't mention it, you kind of just want to keep it simple because the Most High, it's about simplicity, not making it too hard. But yeah.
Yeah. I agree that we are definitely disconnected from the things that are in nature that are good for us. But like I say, because of that, and even if we could look at some of these type of somebody who we would consider to be like a witch, if they're doing something that uh might be something that's fair game, because they're doing it, it make me feel like I shouldn't be doing it. You know what I mean? So I'm just like I gotta do some research on that area.
Well, see, that's the thing. That's what I'm saying. It's like everything's a dual purpose. Because, like, for instance, when you take Moses, when he went into the Pharaoh, and he put that show on with the snake and whatnot, and the Egyptians had their powers, quote unquote, magical powers or sorcery, and then Moses, through the power of the Most High, and he put his staff down and turned into a snake and ate the other one's snake to show who was dominant over him. So it was like, I think it's more than meets the eye.
Yeah. Yeah. We just can't just go and start following these things willy-nilly because of the fact that we have been disconnected and don't know what's we don't know what's what.
Yeah,
right.
We would follow somebody put up a Christmas tree and put some silver and gold on it. Just because they do it don't mean that we're going to just go ahead and we want to look it up first and see, okay.
Yeah, and also too, like you gotta look at these people that when they do these certain practices, what are they praying to a god? That's the thing too. It's like, are they just using it as a Uh, okay, when you go to the hospital, they use what, the seduceus. They got the two snakes going around that staff. That means something. That's sorcery right there. But we'll go to the hospital. That's straight up sorcery. Pharmakia. When you are putting pills into your body, that can change, I'd say, your spirit, because it can make you, it can so-called cure depression or do these different things with the ailments, as opposed to using natural herbs that the Most High put in the ground that can do all the same thing. So I think we just gotta go more into it. Like I said, I'll share some info with y'all because I've been researching that in the past few weeks.
Yeah, it's definitely something to look into, because if we have these commands of Yahweh telling us what not to do, and we don't even know what the things are to not do it, um, it kind of, it causes a little bit of a issue there. I mean, some of these things are easy when you talk about the idea of people trying to talk to dead people and all of this stuff, and palm readers. And I always thought it was weird that the people that sell Christmas trees also, you could get a Torah reading at the same place.
Good what?
Down there across from the ice cream place, across the street.
Yeah, I know they sell Christmas trees.
Yeah, but you can also get a Torah, like a little uh, fortune telling in there too.
Oh,
The same people.
Does Hebrew
They'll
now
tell your
say like
fortune, and send you they'll sell you a Christmas tree.
talking about affirmation poems and kids that talk about you got the M in his hand and that means you're royalty and all that stuff. Two Hebrews in the past about 2 to 3 weeks told me that they delving into some stuff. This one sister said that they were casting lots. And I'm like, okay. She says her and our ancestors casted lots. I said, yeah. She said I was asking questions like, is this brother she was with still her ish? And should she move here? And should she do this? And should she? I said, sis, that sounds like witchcraft to me. No, it's casting lots. I said, that is not casting lots. Casting lots is like gambling. Like, if I win, you get all that. If I lose, then you don't. That's casting lots, not asking it questions about the future. That is witchcraft.
But who
And
she asking though? Who she
her and
asked?
some sisters said they were casting lots. It sounds like they were asking. She said they would ask this question, and it would tell them
It. Who's it though?
exactly, exactly. So I'm like, y'all doing some Ouija board type stuff. Y'all, who you asking? She's like, we just.
She need to pray. They all need to pray.
She knows.
Get some kind
this
of
girl, I'm telling you,
impartation of wisdom.
She knows it. She reads. I mean,
Casting
all the books. Knows the Hebrew. She knows more than I do regarding the scriptures and history and everything. But they out here casting lots, so they think, and reading poems.
Reading palms.
Yeah.
That just, I mean,
but this is, see, what Tequela's saying is what is happening amongst Hebrew women
and the men.
I only know about the women. The women are really getting into these gray, but then it becomes, it gets like they start at a certain point, and maybe they're cool there. It's like a gateway. You start smoking cigarettes, and then what happens after that? You start smoking weed, then you start smoking crack.
I don't associate.
Weed.
That sounded real crazy.
Cigarette.
Next thing you know,
bro, you ever put that down? Next thing you know, you're gonna be smoking some crack. The vape. You start with the vape.
It's the gateway.
The gateway. The vape. The vape tastes good, right? That's one of their things. I never did it before.
Oh, vaping. Yeah, you can smell it.
There's different flavors.
Yeah.
And then that's a gateway into cigarettes.
No.
So I think that, I mean, I hear what you're saying, and I think the problem is that going back to the beginning in terms of the idea of community and the idea of having judges and officers. And the idea of people being able to pull these people back who think they're just doing some spiritual stuff, and meanwhile they slipping off into something else.
Right.
They don't have nobody to sit up there and say, you going a little bit too far with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's a problem. I would say it's a widespread problem. Um, but that's where we are. That's and I agree. I agree that there is a line, and I agree that there's there's good and bad ways to look at these things. But to me, I feel like I feel like there has to be some type of surety in knowing, what you're doing, and not just getting into different things just because it seems like it's okay.
Yeah.
Um, and there has to be some discretion, right? Just like when we look at the person, where it talked about the, you hear something about a thing, right? Well, after you hear about the thing, you was supposed to investigate to see if it was true or not. So I think the same thing is true with these, with these type of things, that we have to be able to really to look into these things, because it's such a slippery slope. If and again, when we look, Israel's problem always is that they going and wanting to do these things that these other nations are doing. um the same thing could be true now. If what I'm doing looks just like what the witches is doing, I don't want that. You know what I mean? um they got the it's You gotta use caution,
Right.
extreme caution, I would say. If you talking about looking at somebody's palms and all that, that's just seems like it's just that's easy. That's what I mean. Palm reading, that's easy. But just some of this other stuff is kind of where it just gets a little gray. But you need to have people really look into these things, so that you're not slipping off into these things that the Most High is calling an abomination. All right. What time is it? Um. All right, real quick. Let's look at John real quick. Um. I'll just look at a couple things here before we be done for today. I wanted to read. Let's see here. Hiskey, read down to here. Read at verse 16 to 23.
16 to 23.
Yeah.
John 5:16. And because of this, the Yehudim persecuted Yeshua and were seeking.
Oh,
And because the Yehudim persecuted Yeshua and were seeking to kill him because he was doing these healings on the Sabbath. But Yeshua answered them, "My Father works until now, and I work." And because of this, then the Yehudim were seeking all the more to kill him, because not only was he breaking the Sabbath, but he also called Elohim his own father, making himself equal with Elohim. Therefore Yeshua responded and said to them, "Truly, truly, I say to you, the Son is able to do none at all by himself, but only that which he sees the Father doing, because whatever he does, the Son also likewise does. But the Father loves the Son and shows him all that he himself does, and greater works than these he is going to show him, in the order that you marvel. For as the Father raises dead and makes alive, and when so the Son makes alive whom he wishes, but for the Father judges no one, but has given all the judgment to the Son, that all should value the Son even as they value the Father. Who does not he who does not value the Son does not value the Father who sent him. Truly true.
Okay, that's good. 23. Okay, so when we look at this, you talk to people who don't necessarily think that they need to be, worrying about the Shabbat. Yeshua, he's a Lord of the Sabbath, and he broke the Sabbath, so that means he broke it because he's the Lord of it, and therefore we don't even have to do it anyway. Um, when we look at this, uh, when you look at the beginning part, I think that the healing part, it talks about him healing on the Sabbath, and them saying that was an issue. But I think the issue was, this is when he went on the guy who had his little bed by the pool, and he healed him and told him to pick up his bed and go ahead. So not necessarily that he was healed on the Sabbath wasn't the problem, I don't think, but that he was carrying his pallet, walking around with his pallet on the Sabbath was the actual problem, I think. Well, in the eyes of the people, because of, again, they did with the Torah what we might do today, where I might say, um, I don't think people should be burning incense because it might be smudging. So I'm gonna say it's illegal to burn incense. Well,
People have aromas.
yeah, I'm gonna say so.
Get the what is it? The thing that sucks up all smells.
See, I don't even know what that is.
I'm thinking about in the chemistry lab.
So
you don't sniff in the vapors.
I'm saying that laws are created by men to try to keep people from doing sin. And so when we look at things that Yeshua has done, he's doing things that's contrary to man's fences that they have put up to keep man from sinning, but it's not sin. So you can't say, even though he healed the man, you can't even say that Yeshua told them. You can't say that Yeshua told the man to do something that was a literal sin.
He would be complicit in that sin.
Oh, I don't know the proper use of that word.
Accomplice.
I don't know the proper use of that word, so I can't say yay or nay to. But I'm
Because
just
he would be
saying,
an accomplice.
if what
in
he
the
was
sin.
doing was making that man sin, then I can't even think that that thing was a sin, because how could Yeshua tell somebody to, in fact, he tells them, don't he tell them to go? No, he does tell him to take up his bed, but I think he also tells him not to sin anymore.
Yeah.
Oh, verse 14. Afterward, Yeshua.
Scroll in the big one too.
I'm sitting there looking over there. Afterward, Yeshua found him, this person that he went and healed. He went off and he didn't know who it was. Afterward, Yeshua found him in the set apart place and said to him, see, you have been made well. The guy who he healed that was by the pool. Sin no more, so that no worse matter befalls you. So how in the world could he have been telling the man to sin and telling them to sin no more at the same time? That doesn't make any sense. Right? So we have to be able to discount the accusations of these people who are saying that Yeshua is breaking the Sabbath. Yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
He's telling them to keep the Sabbath, but as you're breaking the Sabbath, I need you to keep the Sabbath.
That's confusing. Even what you just said is confusing.
So that's why whenever whenever I'm talking to people, I just say, I'm not going. First of all, I'm not going to be an example of any of this stuff. People.
And
that's another thing. Like women who are an older woman or whatever could be an example of doing something that is on the fence. I don't think that's you shouldn't be an example of that. You should be an example of what's in the fence, not what's on the fence.
Hold on, I don't. What do you mean?
Like there's boundaries and borders. Like the Pharisees set up boundaries and borders. So, for example, when Hisky was a little kid, I told him not to touch any windows. Don't touch the window in your room. Why? Because he could reach it from his bed or from the radiator. If he touched the window, he could potentially get out the window very easily from that radiator when he was little. We wasn't in a room with him all the time. So I said, don't touch the window. I'm not going to be an example of touching the window to him.
Oh, when you tell him not to do it.
Yeah, when I'm telling him not to do it.
Yeah.
You know
of
what
course.
I mean? So, because it's not the sin isn't, we don't want you to do that, baby. The sin isn't touching the window. The sin is falling out the window.
Right.
So I want to be an example of touching the window because he could fall out the window. Same thing with some things that might be on the fence. We don't want to be an example of the things that are on the fence because someone else could fall out the fence.
Yeah.
Now,
Someone else could come on board and fall out the fence.
Yeah. So there is a place for the thing that was going on with what the Pharisees was doing. You can see where they was going with the things that they were doing. The problem is that we have to be able to put those things in their place and recognize what it is that Yeshua was actually doing and knowing the difference between what they're saying and where they actually are. So when we look also, something interesting that is going on is when we look at verse 18, because of this, then the Yahudim were seeking all the more to kill. They were trying to kill Yeshua because not only was he breaking the Sabbath, they were saying he was breaking the Sabbath, but he also called Elohim his own father, making himself equal with Elohim. So, according to their thought process, him even saying that the Most High was his father was him making himself equal with Elohim. Well, one could say, well, they said he was also breaking the Sabbath and he wasn't. So how can I look at them thinking that he was equal with Elohim based on what he said and that be true, but the other thing ain't true? Right? So they said he was breaking the Sabbath. He wasn't doing that. So if they're gonna sit up there and say that he was equal with Elohim, maybe that ain't true either. But I think that where do we read down to 23? That this says, I think that what Yeshua continues to go ahead and say, I would say verifies um his position in terms of how he relates to the Most High when we see 22 and 23. For the Father judges no one, but has given all the judgment to the Son, that all should what's that? How's that read in the KJV?
For the Father judgeth no man, but hath committed all judgment unto the Son.
23.
Oh, that all men should honor the Son, even as they honor the Father.
Oh,
He that honoreth not the Son honoreth not the Father which hath sent him.
okay. So that this version has value. KJV says honor. So in whatever way you will honor the Father, the same way you will honor the Son. And whatever way you will honor the Most High, the same way you will honor Yeshua. It seems like it's safe to say that, right? So I'm saying in that respect, it does give credence to this idea of this equality of Elohim and Yeshua, which is something that some people deny, um, which I don't. Okay, so I wanted to just drop down. I wanted to just drop down to the end of this chapter just to go over something real quick before we be done here. Down to 39. You search the scriptures. John 5:39. You search the scriptures because you think you possess everlasting life in them. And these are the ones that bear witness of me. But you do not desire to come to me in order to possess life. I do not receive esteem from men, but I know you, that you do not have the love of Elohim in you. I have come in my Father's name, and you do not receive me. If another comes in his own name, him you will receive. How are you able to believe when you are receiving esteem from one another, and esteem that is from the only Elohim you do not see? Do not think that I shall accuse you to the Father, for there is one who accuses you, Moshe, in whom you have set your expectation. For if you believed Moshe, then you should have believed me, since he wrote about me. But if you do not believe his writings, how shall you believe my words? So when we look, as I always like to bring up is the fact that when we look at the Torah, when we look at the scriptures, um the Old Testament, so-called Old Testament scriptures in particular, we're looking at these things that are pointing us to Messiah, right? So he's talking to these people who know what it is that Moses says. And he says to them, if you believe in Moses, you would have believed me, since he wrote about me. But we don't have no literal examples of like Moses talking about Yeshua, right? But at the same time, we got all kinds of examples of Moses talking about Yeshua. When we look at these things from a spiritual perspective, right? When we think about the different things, we can find Yeshua all over the place. And one of the last things that Yeshua did with his disciples after his resurrection was to show his disciples all the places in the Torah and the prophets that spoke about him. Right? We should always be looking for those things that point us to Messiah, because he's there, right? So the way that he's there again is understanding that the Torah is showing us the character of the Almighty, right? It's showing us his character, right? When we look and we see like how we look today, we look at this idea of the judges and the officers, and we put that against looking at the commandment for the king. We see at the root of what it is that the Most High will have for his people to be was to live in this situation where you're in this communal situation, right? When you allow yourself to be judged by others, right? Putting allowing yourself to be held accountable to other people, right? Being able to trust the spirit of the Almighty in others just as much as you trust the spirit of my Almighty in yourself. Um, so when we think about this idea of following the commandments, right, we have to understand that when we look at the literal commandments are a picture that's pointing us towards um, what we know of as the new covenant, right? We're not executing the law, statutes, and commandments as they were written, right? Because if we were doing that, we'd be going around killing our brothers and sisters who is out here wilding out. Instead, we just taking them to the side and trying to help them, right? And trying to point them in the right direction. We're not like killing them like the Torah says, right? Because we're not living according to the letter of the law. We're living according to the spirit of the law, which is the underlying principles of the Torah, which again is showing us how we are to act out the character of the Almighty. Right. So when we look at the Torah, we have to always have that in mind in terms of what is it that these laws are trying to show us. Where is it that is pointing us to in 2018? How can I manifest these laws, statutes, and commands in my life right now? Okay, so that being said, does anybody have any thoughts before we end this for today? Okay. Okay, so that being said, we will go ahead and shut this down for today. Shalom.